Hi there, everyone. I know some of you may be getting ready for the Super Bowl, but there's some of us who we don't do the Super Bowl. So
Nope.
for those of you who are like me, um, thank you for tuning in and joining us. Thank you if you're going to be listening to us on the replay, because as I told you 2 weeks ago, I wanted to have a guest to talk to us about grief. We've had Dr. Ellis talked about COVID 19 and the numbers, how we've been impacted. We've had lots of lost loved ones due to COVID 19, in addition to the regular loss that you may have from family members who are dying from. Who've passed away from other things. It could be another kind of illness. It could be an accident. It could be unexpected. But I wanted to have our guest here today, who is Crystal Spencer. I was going to give her my name. She's Crystal. I'm Carla. Crystal Spencer, to talk with us about grief and normalizing that discussion. So, Crystal, could you please introduce yourselves to our guests, please?
Sure. Hello. My name is Crystal with the K, Spencer. I am a grief educator and speaker. My mission, as Carla mentioned, is to normalize the discussion around grief. Too long, we suppress it, we ignore the feelings and pain of those who are around us. We sweep it under the rug. We want them to just move on, get over it. But we're not doing that anymore.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
are talking about our grief, we are
Mhm.
talking about our pain, and we are getting help for it. And yes, the process is hard, the journey is hard, but you will come out as gold tried in the fire. So it's not even just your physical and emotional well-being, but God said he wished that we would prosper and be in good health, our soul prosper. So that's the whole package. And so that's what I'm trying to do in God's Good Grief Ministry.
Now, tell us where you are for those who may be joining us now. We will mention again at the end, but tell us how we can touch base with you on social media.
Sure, I am located in Boston, Massachusetts, which we have a snowstorm right now. But you can reach me on social media. I am on Twitter, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, and I am on Instagram at God's Good Grief. On Facebook, it's God's Good Grief. That's the page. But I also have God's Good Grief underscore support group. So if you would like to join the private group, you are welcome. Just abide by the rules. But if you just need a little extra support in your grief, with
Oh,
so
I love that, because especially during this time, and my daughter told me about Crystal, and as she mentioned earlier, so often in my generation, the older generation, you were just supposed to sweep things under the rug. You didn't talk about intimate matters. You didn't talk about. You had so many secrets or so many things you just never talked about. You were just supposed to. Things happened, and you weren't supposed to ask questions.
mercy.
Someone disappears, or someone was molested. You just didn't ask questions. You didn't talk about it. So I love that we have Crystal here, because my goal is to demystify these things.
Yeah.
Let's have these conversations, because so many of us are hurting,
Amen.
and some of us fumble and say things that we shouldn't say
Mhm. Yes.
when it comes to grief. So, the first thing I want to ask you, though, is, can you tell me a little bit about your story? How did this journey with grief begin?
So for me, it started in 2017. It was an awful year for me and my family. So at the beginning of January, probably like a day or two after New Year's, um, my mom passed. And then a few weeks later in February, my stepdad passed. And then in August of 2017, my younger brother was murdered. And like I said, it was really hard. I was really in a lot of pain. I did not know how to grieve. I've had friends in high school and stuff, friends around the way who were murdered. You know what? You go to their service, you cry it out, you believe they're in heaven, although we know that's not true. And you go on, but this hit like right here in the heart.
Oh,
This was mama, papa, and baby brother.
mm,
And I didn't know what to do. And I was so angry with God. I was like, you know what? I'm done with you. Right? I'm out here serving you. I'm out here trying to do right, trying to obey you, all of this, and especially when it came to my brother being murdered. And
Mm.
because I remember getting the call, and while I was waiting for my ride to the hospital, I was just praying. I'm outside crying and praying. I'm like, God, come on. You done pull him through other things. Don't let this happen. You got so much for him, this and that. And as soon as we pulled up to the hospital, and I opened the door to get out the car, and my little sister called me and she was like, he's gone. Our brother's gone. And I mean, I just dropped. I just bawled. I was just angry. And I mean, I went in the hospital because I was like, this can't be true. This is not real. And they let me identify his body. They were like, listen, we do need somebody to identify the body, but I'm gonna let you know the room is a mess and you can't go all the way to the table. You can't touch him. So they opened the door. They have prepared me, opened the door. I stepped on the threshold, and I mean, I collapsed. And the brothers who escorted me there, they just held me up. And I just was like, close the door, because I knew from that distance that was him on that table. And I mean, the room was torn up, there was blood everywhere, but I knew from that distance that was him right there. And it has been a hard journey. I was struggling to find a grief support group, but they were very particular. Like, this had to be your parent, your grandparent, this had to be your child. It was very, very particular. It wasn't something general for people. And so God had people coming at me talking about starting a grief support group at church. And I'm like, I can't even find support by myself. How am I going to help somebody else? So I ran like Jonah. Okay. But we know what happened with Jonah. So that's what happened with me. And in 2018 of March, we had our first grief support group meeting at church, and we've been going strong ever since. We've been online via Zoom each month, just talking it out, addressing issues, seasonal oppressive disorder, just all of these things, that you have to unpack in your grief. And so it comes to a point where me and God are good, because I wasn't praying, and this had been months, maybe even a year. I even told the grief ministry leader, because I was on the team, and I was like, she would rotate people to lead out, and I was like, don't ask me to pray. Don't ask me. I don't have to
Mhm.
pray to God. This
Oh my.
and that. So, that was another process. I had to really come to him, as broken as I was, for him to be able to build me up. And he was doing that through his group. And I didn't see that at first, but I do now. And he's helped me to reach down and help other people.
Well, Crystal, you said so much in that part for your story. And for those of you, if I may be having a little bit technical difficulties, but we're going to get through this session because my internet and wireless may be a little off, so I'm doing it from my phone. So please forgive me and be patient with this great information we're going to be sharing. But you're saying 2017 was the year your mom, then your stepdad, and then your little brother. And I'm like, that is, oh my goodness. So much, like you said, to unpack. But I love how you were honest when you said you were angry with God. And so some of us get afraid to say, oh, we can't say that. But that's truly how we feel sometimes. A person feels. And
True.
it's okay to feel that way.
And God knows our heart. He can
Right.
handle
So
it.
even if we faked it, he still wouldn't know we're angry.
Exactly. So just be real with him.
Okay, so oh my goodness. So for those of you who are out there listening, I know a young woman I met. Her younger brother was murdered last year, and that takes a toll. So you've experienced quite a few different types of grief and death, because the death due to such a violent act like that, unexpected when they're young, is just like no rhyme or reason. And then your mom, your stepdad. So, oh my. One of the things that I wonder sometimes, when we talk about grief, people grieve differently.
Hmm.
So share with us some of the ways people grieve, because sometimes people think, oh, if they're not grieving the way I am, then they're not really sorry or missing. Can you share a little bit about that?
So yeah, I always say as different as our personalities are, so are is the way that we grieve. Right? God created us all so differently. Although we're His children, we have different personalities. We even have different ways that we cope with
Mm-hmm.
grief. And so, so for instance, I have another brother. So I'm from a family of seven, 4 boys, 4 girls, and I have a brother who is a jokester. And that's how he dealt with grief. He would laugh things
Okay.
up. The rest of us, we would just kind of be alone to ourselves and separate from everyone else. We would isolate ourselves. What I learned that there are actually two different ways that people grieve. There's a delayed grief, and then there's immediate, right? And some
Mm-hmm.
people delay it. They're usually the ones who kind of throw themselves back into like work and school and anything else. They don't take time. It's like, I gotta stay busy. I can't focus on it. I don't want to deal with this. I'm all right. I'm all right. And then there's those who deal with it head on immediately. Like they grieve till there's just nothing left. They wring everything out, you know. And so we do all grieve differently. I know someone had asked me a while back, well, what's the difference with men and women grieving? And you know how it is with the ladies, okay? We will get together over brunch or at somebody's house with some tea and some snacks, and we will talk and we will watch movies and we will pray and do everything else. But that's not the way with the men, like they will tend to hold on to things. They don't really open up. A lot of it is societal. So societies are like, any form of weakness, especially for a man, not good. A woman, they expect that. A man,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be strong in a time when it's okay for you to be vulnerable. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's hard, but it's okay to grieve.
Yeah.
It's okay
Yeah.
to grieve, and that's the thing. And even though we do it differently, there's really no right way to grieve. The only right thing is that you do grieve.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
And I like when you say that, because sometimes we want people to grieve the way we do. I still
Mhm.
remember reading in the story in the Bible when David, for his son, when he was still, while the child was still alive, he was
Mm.
praying, sackcloth and ashes. But as soon as uh, the will was done, God's will was done, and the child passed, he got up, started eating, whatever, and people were like, what? You don't think? And he said, there's nothing else I can do now. So for him, it was he moved on. Some people would think, well,
Mhm.
oh, he's not grieving. But I like it when you share and say that, because we cannot compare how we grieve to somebody else's grief.
You just
And that's one of the things. Say it again, Crystal.
you just do it. It's not a right way. There's not a wrong way. The only thing that's right is that you grieve, and you have a right to do that. And
So
I was going to say,
talking
I
about the
love that
right to
story.
do that. Some people say, how long should you grieve? Somebody's like, oh, you
Um,
should get over it by now. Please help those ignorant. Well, let me not be that. Please educate us.
um, so honestly, there's no timetable. There's not. Everybody grieves differently, and some people they always say that those who deal with it first, who really start doing the grief work, are the ones who tend to heal faster,
Hmm.
right? But
Hmm.
there are those who they're just not ready. They're not ready to grieve, and so their time may be a little more prolonged. And I think we look at grief as a race. Like I got to get through this. I got to get through this. It's actually a marathon, right? And the thing is that we're living in a simple world. We're always going to be grieving over something. So you're
Hmm.
not even ready to get over it. You honestly just learn to manage it. You really do.
Oh, I like that. It's not that
Yeah.
you're getting over it. And that's what I like, because I talk about stress management. There's always going to be stress, but you have to learn to manage it. So the
Yeah.
same thing with grief.
Mhm.
It's going to be there. I met a young woman. She comes from a large family. So now, as they're getting older, she's like, yes, time and time again, there's some aunt or some sibling who's passed away. And so dealing with grief, it's just like boom, boom, boom. And so it's about managing it, guys. I like when Crystal said that. So this is not a race, as you said. It is a marathon. This is long term,
Yeah.
and there's no end game. So it's not to say that, oh, it ends somewhere and it's like, oh, why don't you? Now, help us or educate us a little bit more on the grief process. What that is, what should we pay attention to and even nurture during the grief process? What should we be paying attention to?
I think from my personal experience, I would say if you have someone around you who's grieving, pay attention to little odd behaviors. I thank God for the network of people that I had around me. They were like calling me every day. They were texting me, "Did you eat? you know,
Mm,
did you get up? Come on, we need to, go out and get some fresh air. Go take a shower. Go." Because I was actually dead set on just laying in my bed forever and dying there. Because I was like, Lord, I cannot deal with this. I can't carry this. And so just let me die. That's how it feels with grief. And a part of you does die with your loved one. So I would definitely look at any off behavior, any off routines. Like my family know I'm a very punctual person.
uh-huh,
Sister always says, if Crystal is late, something is happening. And so just things like that, like the person, their
uh-huh.
personality, and if that's off, just make sure that you pay attention to them.
Now,
Because
should
they're not going to tell you. So you have
okay,
to really be observant of their behavior and so forth.
because I like when you say that, because when you said for us to pay attention to it, because sometimes people say, um, they may not always tell us, or so you have to be looking for different things if you know that person, to say, this is a little bit different, let me check in. So instead of waiting for them to call you or say what's what is the best way for us to help someone? Should we say, I've seen different people say, well, oh, when they say, oh, call me if you need me, and some people's like, no, you should call me anyway.
Mhm.
How do we have those conversations so we know that we are respecting, what they need from us? Because sometimes we're not sure, should we call, should we wait for them to call us? I don't want to intrude. you
Mhm.
know
I would say definitely take the initiative. I always tell people, even if you know the person in their family, please pray and ask the Holy Spirit for guidance. Because this little member here it sets fire. It sets fire in different relationships that can't be undone. And we say, someone's grieving. It's like, no, I'm not gonna have that. She's gonna pull herself up out of this because we gonna be around here moping. What you need to do is ask God, how do I move about? How do I be there for them in this difficult time? A lot of time what do I say? What exactly do I say? So many people have been there for me and they have just let me talk. They've just let me cry. They have just been that shoulder. And even when they didn't say anything, they were just present. That meant they still don't even to this day know how much
wow.
that's meant to me. Just
Hmm.
very present. And I've met so many people on this journey who have said the same thing. The mere fact that people were just there for me, just sitting with me in my grief, meant the world. It means so much.
I like that, because we don't always have to say something. You just may just need another present, another body. I know a friend of mine, her husband passed, and she says, just coming in the house, you just miss being able to have that regular conversation that you would normally have, or pick up the phone and call your mom or whoever that person is. So, again, one of the things that I wonder if we need to ask people, if they want to share stories about their loved ones. Because sometimes I know when someone passes away, people's like, oh, I don't know if I should bring up their name or what's what. It's just like all of a sudden, again, when we don't want to discuss it. But it's
Mhm.
just like, hey, just because they passed away doesn't mean that there's still not stories or something that you want to talk about and share.
Mm. And I went through that with my brother, right? Everybody who knew us, who knew that they're like, They wouldn't say his name, and I'm getting upset because I'm like, say his name, because to me it felt like just because he passed doesn't mean he's not in our hearts. It doesn't mean he's not on our minds. But I think
Mhm.
for some people, they think, oh, will this trigger something? Will this, make them feel sad or whatever? No, it actually brings joy to know that people still remember him and think highly of him and speak of
Yeah.
him. So say their names.
Yeah.
Tell those stories. Put people and tell those stories. I remember that time when your brother, oh man, that helps. That really,
Mhm.
really helps, to, honor them and memorialize, they, how they did exist.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Can you share a story about your mom or your brother or your stepdad?
Oh man. So my mom was like, she loved being around people. She really did. She was like the life of the party. She loved Motown. Smokey Robinson was her man. You can't tell her differently, okay? And her best friend was telling us a story of how they went to see Smokey Robinson and they tried to meet him backstage. And somehow the people who were with him directed him out to a door, and her and my mom discovered it and chased. And I never knew that story. My mom never told us that. Like we knew she was crazy about Smokey Robinson, but not that extent. And with my stepdad, he was I always just felt so safe in his presence. He was just always this guy who like commanded respect, but then he was so like very family like, and he will always tell us as little girls, oh, look at you guys, look at you're my teenagers. We will wear, our little outfits to school. And he always encouraged us and tell us how beautiful we were growing up and everything. I love that so much. And you look at it, you're like, wow, this is how men were. This is how dads were, And
Mhm.
my brother, oh man, I hope I don't tear up because sometimes it's the hardest talking about him. But he was great at imitating people. And he was great at imitating, like you could be family or you could be somebody in a movie. And we grew up through the 80s and 90s. So we would watch like Coming to America, the Goonies, and we would know line for line and we would act out these our favorite scenes in the movies. And he was just a big old teddy bear, that everybody loved. He was so kind, but he was very protective of, especially me and my little sister. He was very protective of us, even though he was younger than me and older than my little sister. He's very protective of us. He knew everybody. They
Mhm.
you seen your brother riding by on his bike or whatever, the older women in the neighborhood, your brother stopped by, he would help them with like legal issues that they had, whether it was child support, whether it was getting friends and stuff out of jail. He will write, things for them. The parents of his friends would love him for that, like, help him to stay on the straight and narrow. And so he was just that guy. And I miss him so dearly. I really do. I even look at old birthday cards that him and my mom sent me. I can't hear their voice anymore singing happy birthday to me, but I have the pictures, I have the cards, I have the memories. I remember their voices, their hugs. So that usually keeps me pushing when I have those hard days because I still have those hard days.
Right, right, right. Oh my. That is awesome because when you talk about just hearing their voice, I know there's certain people that I have on my voicemail on my phone that I don't delete because I'm like, one day I want to hear their voice. They may or may not, you just never know. But I just say, like you said, we don't write cards anymore. Most of us don't. But again, having those kinds of keepsakes are just priceless for someone who's passed away, and just to remember us, remember them by, and share those stories. So I'm so glad you shared that because again, I got a little glimpse into them, even though I've never met them. But doing that, because the other question I want to segue into is, how do you handle people who want to be nosy? Oh, how did a person die? Because so often,
Mm,
it's a shame, but it is one of the human, between the nose and the mouth, we just seem to get ourselves in trouble.
mm,
Help people learn the etiquette of what to do and not to do, and what questions they shouldn't ask, and how someone who's faced with that question can answer it in a way, respectful or not. I don't know what it would be a great way, but
Hmm.
share with us, please.
For me, so God is still working on me because my facial expressions, He has to work on me on this. But I do try to whisper a little prayer and just ask the Spirit to help me respond how He want me to, not how my flesh wants me to. Um, when I look at those people and when they ask, it's always like, are you really asking out of concern, or are you asking out of, I need to take this back and gossip, about it? And
Mhm.
so you can, gently, put your hand on their hand and just say, I can't, share that. It's too hard for me to speak of, or something to that
Mhm.
nature, just kind of settling them, and their curiosity, and just ask that, please, keep me and my family. Well,
Mhm.
so the thing with my brother's death was, it was under investigation. We didn't know who did this, what they knew about us, anything. And so we couldn't, talk about it. So there was really like, don't say nothing on Facebook. There was trying to shut down his page and, his account and everything, and just all of these things. And so, and that kind of left me on edge because I'm like, well, I don't know who I can trust,
Uh-huh.
and so
Mhm.
with things of that nature, especially, I would just, definitely let people know, "Yeah, I'm not comfortable talking about that. I'm not comfortable sharing that. But I do ask that you please keep us in prayer." And so hopefully that's something that will kind of settle them, give them peace, give them
Mhm.
something to pray about instead of gossip about. And then there's people who are genuinely concerned and they want to put that in there because they were like, well, I'm gonna ask God to be with this investigation. I'm going to ask God to reveal who did this, to move on their hearts to save this. I was like, well, thank you, because my prayers have been totally different in regards to them. But God changed my heart on that as well. Thank God. So I would definitely say, just let them know you're not comfortable with discussing that or sharing that. Please keep you and the family in prayer. Yeah.
And because one of the things that I've encouraged people to do, I said, be a politician. They don't answer the question that they were asked. You don't
That's
have
all
to
around
answer a
you.
question that somebody asks you, guys. You really
True.
don't.
True.
People
No
people
comment.
can ask whatever they wish. You do not have to answer.
That's true.
Repeat after me. I don't have to answer. So they may ask their question, and you know what the politicians do? They just go on a whole tangent. What they want to focus on, you can just talk what you want to talk. They may ask you, "Oh, how did he pass away?" Hey, I'm so glad you came. Thank you for your prayers.
That's right.
You don't have
That's
to answer
right.
the question,
That's right.
because again, if they feel that, if they're that bold enough to ask you, you can be that bold enough not to answer. So
True.
that is just me as a coach, what I encourage people to do in many questions that you are being asked. you know
Yes.
just because you ask a question, this is not school where I'm going to get dinged or an F if I don't answer the question. I
Hmm.
don't have to answer it respectfully, especially like you said, because in your flesh, you may have something else you want to say. So it's best for you for all of our sakes, for my salvation,
Yes. Yes. Help me,
we're
Lord.
not going to do that. Yes. So thank you for that particular tip. So again, you guys are giving some great comments. For those of you who are listening, thank you for sharing and taking your time to share with us. So now we've heard a little bit about your story, and so what I want to find out is, what are some things you do to keep busy when you're feeling down? So, like you said, you may have those moments of highs and lows and everything. How do you navigate that, or how do you encourage others to do that?
So with grief, I actually try to figure out, okay, well, what's triggering me? to kind of feel down or whatever. So I try to assess that first. But usually when I feel like I don't want to deal with it, I go and do something that's going to lift my spirit. So that could be going bike riding. That can go ice cream with some jimmies. That could be going to sit by the water, journaling. I might even journal why, how I'm feeling. Or I would just put on, my Spotify playlist with the 90s R&B and B and just dance my heart out. Watch a comedy movie. I love comedies, not raunchy, but just something funny, and so I usually, do something like that. So for me, it's anything that would like make me laugh, anything that would take my mind off of it. But if it's something that's weighing on me like that day and the next day, then I'm like, okay, what's really going on? Let me assess what triggered this. Why am I feeling, so down? Like it's
Mhm.
crazy. So the other
Mhm.
day, I was kind of feeling that way. So I just started back to work. I've been furloughed since March last year. So I just started back. It's just finished 2 weeks. And we are doing these Monday team meetings. And, I'm taking notes for my boss. Now, I forgot to type up the notes and send to him. So on Thursday, I'm working from home and I get up in the morning and I'm like, oh, the notes, they're at work, they're in the office. And so I'm like, oh, goodness, Lord, please don't let him call and check in. I start crying. I'm so stressed. I start crying. And then I get a message from my sister that
Oh,
a family member passed away. She was found dead in her apartment. And that just sent me deeper
oh.
into what I was already feeling. And so I said, okay, I've got to
Mm.
step back from all of this because now this is weighing on me and it's suffocating me. So I turned off my phone. I just actually turned my phone on, I think like last night or this morning, because I was like, no social media, no nothing. I just need to sit and be still. I need to be in the presence of God. You got to take this weight off of me. And that's what I did. I even went for a walk yesterday and I got out in the sun. Something about the vitamin D, just, it also helps your mental capacity, not only just kind of helping,
Yes.
help other health things. And I got out and I walked and I walked and I just stopped in a park and I found myself actually just running my hands because I love trees because I think they're just so strong and beautiful. And just like horses, I love horses. And I actually just end up being by this tree. And I literally was hugging it. And I was running my hands over it, and there was smooth parts and there was rough parts. And I was like, Lord, this is like, the Christian journey. But through it all, you help us to be like trees planted, by the water. And I stayed out there for a while and then I went back home and I ate, I showered, I had a nice nap, like I just rested. And so I'm like, okay, so those are some things you could do. You have to self-care, you have to take care of yourself, or you can't take care of anybody else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Again, self-care is definitely needed, and whatever they may find it in, because I love when you says just out there walking in nature, because sometimes you just have to just ground and center yourself again because of the weightiness of everything that is happening. There's for those of you who work in the health professions, they could be compassionate fatigue because with COVID, I know I went to see my doctor for my checkup, and she said, yeah, there's been so many of her patients who've passed away due to COVID. And so, even for them, processing those things and just taking that time for self care to just feel that grief. We can't pretend any longer because um, it's here. It's right here in our face, and we have to deal with it. But one of the questions I wanted to know: we know that one day we all will face death
Yeah.
of a loved one, and the topic is often avoided until the day comes. So, should one prepare themselves for to experience grief? If so, what should or should they not do?
Mm. Yes, definitely prepare yourself. Do not Don't wait. Don't put it off. With my mom, that was something we always address with her. Mom, if anything happens to you, what do we do? Do you want to be buried here in Boston or do you want to be buried in Chicago, where she's from? Do you want to be cremated or do you want, to be in a casket? Like, who's your healthcare proxy? And it was a discussion she did not want to have. Like, she just refused it. And my mom was very savvy at turning the conversation around. Like you said, the politician, that was her. Whole different conversation. We're like, wait, weren't we just talking about? So have those tough discussions. I know it's hard, but let me tell you something. We sit and we plan vacations, we plan weddings, okay? We plan parties, we're going on a cruise, we plan all of this. But we need to start planning what will happen to us at the end of life, not just literally, but also spiritually. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Make that decision for Christ today that you know you're resting with him in eternity. You know what I mean? And not otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard discussion to have, and many people skirt by it. But if it was not for my mom's best friend and my mom talking throughout the years of what my mom wanted, we would have just been like, do what you whatever you want to do. We didn't know how to plan a funeral service. We
Mm-hmm.
were experiencing this, but her best friend was like, your mother wants to be cremated. Your mother wants this outfit in her closet. This is what this is and this. She wants this. And we were like, Lord, thank you. Thank you so much
Mm.
because we had no idea. You know,
Wow.
so don't do that to your loved ones. Get that
Mm-hmm.
healthcare proxy, put somebody in charge, your power of attorney or whoever the person is. You type up a will. There are easy things online to fill out a simple will. Make sure you get all your documents notarized that they will be legal, or else you are going to have a headache. And trust
Wow.
me, planning a funeral is already stressful. Trying to divvy up belongings between loved ones and characters come out with friends and family during these times. Trust me, everybody ain't sweet and nice and holy as they appear to be. Characters come out when there's some money or something involved,
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
you want to really do all of that, and just plan as much as you can. But please,
Oh,
you should not wait until the last minute. Do it ahead of time. I've learned that funeral homes, you can even go by law, you have a right to get a pricing list. You don't have to go to that, you don't have to pay that. You can go and compare pricing list, like what you do for weddings, dance,
yeah.
reception
Mm-hmm.
halls, food, catering and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Yeah, because guess what? This is a wedding. If you in Christ and you die in Christ, and you gonna reunite with the bridegroom, prepare just like that. Prepare to meet your God.
I,
Prepare
I
like that.
like that because when they are planning a party, whatever, they're looking for prices and venues and all of that.
Yes,
Because if you wait till the last minute, the price goes higher. They're just going to charge you whatever, and you're not thinking, you're not processing, and so therefore, um, we find ourselves caught unaware because, like you
yes,
said, people don't realize. Funeral could cost $10,000, $20,000, caskets and all of that. So we, in my family, my children, we've normalized talking about grief and death. So I don't believe in giving any money to the burial people. So I told my girls, donate my body to science. So they know to donate my body to science. Maybe they'll pay for it, but they can give it away free as long as it's not going to cost them anything for it. I'm like, guys, do not waste any money for a funeral. I said you can have a memorial service, that's fine.
mhm.
I want to do a karaoke service, so I may be singing along and you could play it on the screen. And they look at me like, Mommy. I'm like, well, those people who know me will appreciate it. Those who don't really know me then.
That's right. It's true, and I
So
think
we have different conversations about it, about grief and knowing what to expect. But one of the things that I think we when you say to learn and do. I remember listening to this one program once on, it was a radio show on NPR, and the lady now had to go clean out her mom's home. And so one of the things I'm trying to make sure I don't leave for my children is a whole mess to go through, you
Mhm.
know, because sometimes you can be a pack rat. You want to keep all your funeral things, all your friends have died and all these, and you have now left this for your family to have to go through. So I just want to tell people, please, y'all, you know, we don't need to collect everything because somebody has to go through that stuff
That's right.
when that time comes. And so kind of stream it down, kind of think practical.
Mhm.
But I know it's hard for you to think about that. But I like when you say that, just planning for these things, so that we could just be proactive in handling our grief. Because I spoke to a gentleman yesterday, and his mom has dementia, and he says, you know, this is the first time she's talking about death, you know, and he doesn't like having that conversation. But and I said, yeah, it's hard, to when your parents, when somebody's getting older or sicker, and you realize that, you know, something may happen.
Mhm.
um, does your support group prepare people for that, or is it once they've actually lost somebody that they now talk with someone?
So the support group, we actually are a group of people who have lost someone. But I do encourage people to talk about that. And actually, that may be something that I would be turning my attention to now in the grief support group, because we talk a lot about people dying, but in grief, there are people who are grieving people who are alive. So, like your
Mhm.
friend whose mom has dementia, don't be surprised if when she does pass, that he goes on with his life because sometime in this process, they've been grieving the whole time.
Time,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And some people, honestly, they're like, I've been a caretaker for so long, and now I feel bad because I'm not grieving. I'm at peace that they laid to rest. But you've been grieving this whole time. You've had this day in and day out, and you've also, some of them have had time to prepare,
Mhm.
just the paperwork, but also to prepare their hearts as much as they can. And so that's why usually when they are passed, it is a little easier for them. But I think I will start really touching more on that in the grief group. Like we need these preparations. My oldest sister and her husband, they have all their paperwork in an envelope, so their kids know if anything happened, this is where the envelope is, this is where you find it. Do that. Like I said, prepare it like you are preparing your wedding and baby showers and everything else.
Yeah.
Prepare for that. Put it somewhere. Let someone know. I told my sister, what I wanted for my service, and I'm like, I've got my list of passwords to close that account. That was the blessing with my mom. Even though she wasn't packed, like she was very neat, she was very organized. She had a lot of stuff, but she's very organized. So that really helped us to differentiate what is going to be donated to like a Goodwill or something and what people were coming to pick up to get. So we would back
Mhm.
and put people's name on it. We're like, this is the day where everybody needs to come and pick up their stuff, or else the maintenance people in our building were just going to come in and just trash it, basically. So
Mhm.
ample time, but that also alleviates from the family because it's hard enough to go through that, but to be constantly
Yeah.
going through. It's like, oh my goodness. So just help them out in that
I
way.
I like that because I'm not an organized person, but I use this one particular tool that my coach told me about, and I use it with my clients. Is like a Trello board. So I created a Trello board for my children and my husband, all of us, so that each one of us can put who they want us to contact. Because I don't know who my kids' friends are, who they would want me to contact if something happened. They
Mhm,
know who I want to them to contact from me, like you said, bank accounts, life insurance policy,
mhm,
what the address is, who it is. So it's like a one-stop shop, so they can just they all have access to the board, so they can just go there. I could go there because if something happens, they live in different places. Your boss's number, because if something happened, who do I contact? So I like how you say make sure we plan, just like you would plan if you're getting married or going on a vacation,
Mhm.
searching for a new home. You would do your due diligence. For us to be just as practical to say, let's have this information. We may not need it for 80 years or whatever, but if we do need it, we have it there. One of the other things that when it comes to grieving, I remember early on in my marriage, my husband had a illness, so we were in and out of the hospital, and a few times we thought he wouldn't make it. But I remember one time we were in the hospital room, and the person who was sharing the room with my husband, he ended up passing. And the wife was just, it was an older couple, but she was just there, just distraught because she didn't know what to do. She'd never paid any of the bills. He took care of that. He did all of that. So she didn't know what to do. And
Yes.
so I really think it's important for us to talk about the grief process, but again, where things are. So
Yeah.
when something happens, we do it. So I'm glad that your mom had that friend there to let you know that,
Yes.
because you didn't know that. But I know we're winding down. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, I've been to funerals before, and you see people cutting up or somebody dies. And I still remember when my grandmother passed, I never saw my aunts cut up like I did when I was just like, are they fighting over China? But I realized it was just really grief. But things can happen.
Yes.
So tell us, why is it, or when you have the passing of a loved one, and it just seems to be that ugliness or that fighting that may come out there? Help us through that.
I think honestly, it's because we're in our feelings. Our emotions are high. So I always tell people when we hear the news of someone's passing, right? People always say that's when you grieve. That's actually the part where you're mourning, right? And so you don't really get to grieve until everybody's gone. You get to, process this like, wow, you're coming down off of everything. But when you are in the thick of it, and it's happening, and people are acting all out and stuff, I really believe it's because our emotions are way up here. We're not even thinking rational. We're just running on feelings, emotions, and whoever's in the pathway, they just gonna get God.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, and when I think about it, I think about how what a disservice we do in our society in not really discussing grief and preparing people as much as we can and how to kind of handle grief. And so when we do have to grieve and we go to these services, I mean, our emotions and stuff are just everywhere. You know,
Mm-hmm.
act out, and we bring more pain, to our loved ones. We're already grieving someone that we lost, but now we're inflicting more pain, on those around us when we really should be supporting each other during this time. But we just have to learn to deal with grief and process it, and so now we just go all out and just, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this fighting, and I'm like, what? This is not a boxing match. This is not the time and the place for this. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, some people also use it as a platform to address issues that have been long past that they've been carrying. And so now that mama or whoever has passed, we gonna deal with this right now. And guess what? That's not the time and place to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not,
Yeah.
is it? You really need to, the Lord says, come, let us reason together. Reason when you have your senses, when you are focused, not when you're high on emotions. Because everything people are going to say to you, you're not hearing, you're not trying to process that. You hear people say that, I'm not feeling it, I'm not trying to hear that right now. No, 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 let me. So when you come off of these emotions stuff, you calm down and you're processing things and you're getting back, to yourself, then you can deal with all those other things, issues that have come along, on top of the grief. So I really think it's because we're in our feelings and we really haven't learned to deal with the emotions that come with grief.
And I like that too. But I said one of the things I've also found is when you mentioned the unresolved issues that have been festering, going back to what you talked about earlier, how we don't discuss grief many times. And I'm not making a plug for a coach, but if you need a coach or a therapist to deal with your issues before that time, and they may never address it. Your family members may not with certain things, but you have a right to be heard with what's happened in your family. And so my girls tease me all the time and say, oh, such and such is your favorite, and you don't do this for us. I know they're going to have issues, but hope they go to a therapist and
Mm.
address their issues. But many times, because you don't address the issues now, um, when someone has passed away, it's just all bubbled over. All your resentment or all your anger because of what may have been a slight that was never addressed is now kind of bursting there. So definitely, guys, we know that your parents, your siblings, or others may have done something, because we're all learning how to have better relationships now.
Mhm.
And so they made mistakes.
Yeah.
And so be willing to do your work. That other person may not. But before we go, because I know we're winding down with our time, um, for some people whose person has lost their life, sometimes they feel guilty because they think it's their fault,
Mhm.
because something may have happened. I remember some time ago when I didn't know the person um, personally, but I knew a family member, and they had accidentally left their grandchild in the car. So that child passed away. And so that grief and that guilt, I know it really just devastated them. So
Mhm.
something could have happened to a family member or somebody you may have felt you caused that person to pass away. And
Mhm.
so their grief may be a little bit different. How can And please share resources. Please share resources, Crystal, that they're struggling with that, and they don't know how to let that go.
Yeah, definitely. I am an advocate for therapy, for recovering groups, for any kind of support groups. I am an advocate for it. I have done them all. I actually was in therapy before the passing of my mom. So I had been in therapy probably, wow, I think I had just started therapy. I had just started therapy
Mhm.
like that August, and then this was in January. So I'm definitely an advocate for it, and I totally feel them on the guilt. Um, it's a stage in the grief journey that is called bargaining and guilt. And so basically, what you do is like you have the what if and if only, and what if I would have lived my life this way? If only I would have this and this. And I have beaten myself up time and time again because I felt like that with my brother. If only I called more. If only I did. If only, and guess what? That's still the pain that happened to him, right? And it was hard, and I had to really let that go. I had to talk about that a lot in therapy. You can pray about that a lot because guilt will choke you, right? Like it weighs on you, and you're always looking for like a solution to kind of get rid of it to undo the guilt.
Mhm.
What happening, and if you had the power, yeah, you probably could, undo what happened, but because we don't, we have to give that over to God. We have to go through therapy. We have to work on that, because God doesn't want that to weigh on us. He doesn't want us living a life with guilt, right?
Mhm.
Because guilt is going to steal your joy. It's going to steal your peace. it's going to leave you in shame. And we know that's one of the tactics of Satan. I mean, let's be real. That's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we have to make sure that you work through that so that you can be freed from that. Because you don't want to be dragging and making guilt over. And it may be a long process, but that's okay. Stick with it because you are going to have relief from it. You will. You may not have it immediately, but the more that you talk about these things, the more that you work through them with a therapist or whoever, the more like it's going to start unpacking it and getting this weight off of you so that you can, start moving forward and be in prayer. Be in
All right.
prayer.
Oh, thank you, Crystal. And so someone asked the question, are they stray away from, they dislike saying sorry for your loss. Are they better ways to respond or reach out when you know someone has passed?
So I did a video on YouTube about what to say and what to do or what not to do and what not to say. And I know a lot of people cringe, and I still use that term. I'm so sorry for your loss. But I usually say my deepest or sincerest condolences to you and your family. So I try to leave it at that because really people are like, well, what do you have to be sorry about? Like you wouldn't do this, and I think that's kind of where that comes from. So I usually say with my deepest condolences, to you and your family, um, and I try not to. Be right on the family when they get the news of loss. I know people like to call you and text you all the time, but give them that time to absorb that. It may take a few days, it may take a week, but give them that time, and just know that they have planning to do. So they're going to be in the midst of everything, planning and all of that. So just give them condolences or just drop a card by for the food. We used to do food, dropping it to people's home to help them not have to do the extra, tasks of cooking and so forth. I know that was really helpful. My church family, when my family came into town, they just brought us food, and that was a weight off of us from planning other stuff we have to do. On my website, I do have a tab of resources, and I will be also updating the resources as I come across more stuff. And what's your grief is a really good website. I've got to add that to my website, and they have a really good podcast. They kind of break things down a little bit more clinically or therapeutically, however you want to say it. I'm not in that field, mine is full experience, but they will definitely helpful. If you've dealt with a tragic loss, like I have with my brother, homicide, the Lewis D. Brown Institute in Boston, they are amazing. They're on Facebook. I think they're on Instagram, and they are on my website as a resource as well.
Okay,
So
so
those
I'm
are
putting that up there. People can see the website.
yeah.
And you told us a little bit about your website and all of that. So as we wind down, remind them again of your services. I know you said you have a group that meets once a month.
Yes. So we
Um, and
so
so,
oh, so I do a monthly group once a month. We are meeting virtually now with Zoom. I always have a website one Facebook group on Instagram and Twitter, so it's always updated. Also, in terms of their partnership, that I do memorial services. So if you want to book me to speak at your service, I you can also book me to do a grief sensitivity training at your school, at your church, at your workplace. I'm okay with doing it virtually. And so those are some of the things that I do because we need to normalize it. We need to talk about this. People are hurting, like you said earlier, and we need to deal with that hurt. There's a reason why our mental health is the way it is. In this country, you can't keep sedating people and drinking people up. You have to get to the issue. And so that's what I'm just trying to do, just start that conversation and keep it going.
Oh, wow. I am so grateful. Thank you so much, Crystal, for sharing your story, sharing what you've learned, sharing what you've discovered, for being so honest with us on your journey and your talks with God. Because how did you come by the name Good Grief?
So that's the same thing I asked God. I was like, good grief, for what? But he's definitely been with me in this whole ministry. And with that name, he was showing me all of the good that was coming out of this. You know, it was the group that was started that was needed. So many people at church was like, I don't even know any churches that have a group support group. I got to meet so many people along this journey, complete strangers. And we're like in public, we're crying, we're talking about our grief, we're changing stories of our loved ones, um, helping me to unpack other issues that my grief actually highlighted. And so I got to, go into therapy and really dig deeper so that I can be better and be of better service to the kingdom and to other people as well. And then with also the grief educator title, I struggled with that. I was like, God, I felt like Moses and stuff. I don't have speech. I don't have communication. I don't. And he gave me that actually in a dream. It was in a dream that he gave me that. And it was at the end of the dream, and he just kept saying, educator, educator, educator. And after that
Wow.
dream, it didn't even leave me alone. It kept ringing. And I'm like, and until I changed it, just as changing the name, because it was just good, it was just grief support group. And he's like, no, God's good grief. And because I kept hesitating, I'm going to change it. And they know it. And until I changed it, that's when I got peace. And until I put grief and sickness in the speaker, that's when I got peace. So it's really God, and He's really doing some good things in this ministry. He keeps blowing my mind, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Oh, my. I love it. I love it.
And I
I
just
love it.
had a young
Guys,
lady. There was someone who
oh,
reached out to me via email because she wants to start a grief support group for the ladies at her church who have lost their spouses. So we'll be
oh,
talking tomorrow.
that's what I'm thinking about in this day and age, especially with the COVID. My husband keeps reminding me different times when he says, Carla, there were when our numbers peaked, there were 4,000 and something deaths due to COVID. When we
Yes.
hit our highest peak and others. So every day, so if that is your heart's desire and your gifting, because not all of us can be a grief facilitator or grief educator,
Mhm.
because some of us are like a bull in a china shop. So that's not your gifting. It may be just bringing them some food, but
Mm,
so, but
that
there
helps
is such a need, right? That, so there is such a need. So thank you so much for sharing your story
you. Thank you for
with us.
having me.
And guys, if you're out there and you need to reach out, I put her information there so you can follow her. I'll actually put her Facebook group as well too, so you can like her page and get more information. If you feel led to start one in your area, now it's
Mhm.
virtual, so it's possible. So whoever you are out there, you don't have to do this alone. You can have somebody hear your tears. You don't need to cry alone. You don't need to grieve alone. It does feel good to have somebody there just sitting with you to hear you,
Mhm.
hear your pain, hear you process that. So
Mhm.
what if you want to talk about it 400 times or whatever? Somebody is there to hear you, and find those people who are willing to do that. So the people who you may live with may not want to do it. They handle grief differently. So we're not going to judge them on how they
Mhm.
handle their grief. You may need to find someone else who grieves like you do, who can understand that and allow you to process your grief. So,
That's
once
right.
again, thank you, Crystal, for joining us this week. Guys, February, I'm not having any more until March. We're going to have Marie, and she's going to talk about inspiration and motivation. She's out of London, England area. So we're going to have her
Mhm.
March 7th, but I'm taking some R&R for this month
That's
of
right.
February. So do that self-care, guys, and take care
Yes.
of yourselves. And thank you for tuning in. Bye. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. God bless. Bye.